Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I seek to respond to the ministerial statement on infrastructure that's just been tabled. This ministerial statement by the Prime Minister—
Senator Rice, are you moving to take note of the ministerial statement?
Is that what I do? Okay, I move to take note of the ministerial statement. Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President.
Proceed.
This ministerial statement on infrastructure is full of fine-sounding, silver-tongued words from the Prime Minister. But it's yet another example of Prime Minister Turnbull talking big while actually delivering on the same old small-thinking Abbott-Turnbull agenda. We have got a situation where the government is stretching the truth. We will believe the government's talk on infrastructure when we see action. This infrastructure statement is trying to pretend that the government has seen the light, is recognising what Infrastructure Australia has been saying is important, and that's to be dealing with congestion in our cities, dealing with the livability of our cities by investing more in public transport. But the Prime Minister, in this statement and in this response to the infrastructure plan, is stretching the truth to make it sound like the government's committed to investing in public transport, to pretend that there's something different, while it is the same old roads, roads, roads agenda. The truth is that this government has an abysmal record on investing in public transport, and there is no sign that anything is going to change. The example of my home state of Victoria is we have currently got a situation where not only is federal funding in transport infrastructure in Victoria at very low levels, it's only an abysmal 1% of funding, of that federal transport funding, is going into public transport. 1%. And yet the Prime Minister has the gall to acknowledge that Infrastructure Australia found that our largest cities need urgent investment to public transport to improve transport options in outer suburbs and increase rail capacity. Nothing in this statement gives us confidence that anything is going to change. In fact, if you look at the investments that are outlined here, and if you look at the projects that are outlined here, overwhelmingly they are still more of the same. They are roads, they are roads, and they are roads. And we know that you cannot cure congestion in our cities by investing in more roads. Trying to solve congestion by building more roads is like trying to cure obesity by loosening your belt. It just doesn't work. We have to give people the choice of investing, have to give people the choice of fast, frequent, reliable, affordable and safe public transport, to give people the opportunity to get out of their cars and to be travelling on public transport. If you live in the outer suburbs, you don't have that choice at the moment, and the type of investment that is being outlined here is not going to be the level of investment that's required to change that. I mean, I think it is absolute gall to say in this statement that it's not just about roads. And in fact, the Prime Minister says in this statement that there's over $4 billion of funding in public transport projects. However, if you look and dig into the details of that $4 billion, you'll actually find that that came from— it was a Liberal Party commitment that was taken to the election. It's actually not in the government's overall response. That $4 billion includes $800 million that was going to go to Melbourne Metro. But we now know that the Victorian government couldn't do a deal with the federal government and get the adequate funding for transport in Victoria, and they said no to the federal government's $800 million into Melbourne Metro. So the figures that are in here in terms of the investment in public transport are absolutely dodgy. And then, even if you accepted that $4 billion figure, even if you accepted that, that's $4 billion out of $50 billion, which is the total transport package. That's 8%. That is not the type of transformational investment that's going to make a difference. This is more of the same. This is the same old Tony Abbott roads, roads, roads agenda being delivered by Malcolm Turnbull, but with the guise that something has changed. Similarly, there's commitments, supposed commitments here about getting freight on rail. And this is a wonderful statement that says that we're going to see construction begin on inland rail in the new year, which I find fascinating because we know from questions at Senate estimates, that the whole inland rail project is going to take something like $10 billion. And at the moment, there is only $500 million that's been invested. And when I've asked about what that $500 million will deliver, it's obviously not going to deliver the whole inland rail from Melbourne to Brisbane. It's basically there's no construction that's factored into that $500 million. So we wait to see what investment the government is going to put into inland rail to deliver on that statement that construction is going to begin in the new year. Another example of there's a lot of fine-sounding words both in the response to the infrastructure plan and in the ministerial statement about the need to have better quality decision-making, to have rigorous evidence-based decision-making. And yet all over the place there is such lack of transparency, lack of accountability, so that we just don't know whether the evidence stacks up for these investments that are being made. And in fact, in the examples where we have been able to dig out the information out of the black holes, where there have been business cases where bits of information have allowed to be on the public record rather than to be commercially in confidence, we end up with interesting situations and, in fact, more than interesting, really inappropriate situations of complete misrepresentation of the value of these road projects. And just at Overflow Senate estimates this week, we discovered that there are serious questions that need to be asked about the benefit-cost ratio that's been touted for the WestConnex project in Sydney. Under questioning, it's very clear that the supposed benefit-cost ratio of 1.7 that's been touted for WestConnex is based on a lower price than what the road is going to actually cost. That benefit-cost ratio is based on WestConnex only costing $13.5 billion, which is the discounted cost of the road, rather than the real undiscounted cost of the road of $16.8 billion. And when I was questioning the department on this during estimates this week, they acknowledged that yes, it should be the $16.8 billion cost that benefit-cost ratio should be based on. So that means that that 1.7 benefit-cost ratio does not stack up. It is not accurate, it is not true, and the government's investment in WestConnex is based upon those false figures. Why should it take digging, pulling out these tiny bits of information, bit by bit, like pulling teeth, to get this information to come out? And the reason it's so, the reason why we have lack of transparency, the reason we've got all this secrecy is that, in fact, continuing to invest in these big road projects does not add up. And if you had truly evidence-based, transparent, accountable decision-making, it would be clear, as Infrastructure Australia make clear, that where the urgent investment needs to be is in public transport. That's where the priority needs to be. That's where we have lacked investment over the last 40 years, but yet this government shows absolutely no signs of doing anything more than just talk. The action on delivering it is nowhere to be seen. I also wanted to note the government's shirking of its responsibility for investing in walking and cycling infrastructure. In the response to Infrastructure Australia, they said that walking and cycling is the responsibility of the states and local government. That's not good enough. We know that investing in walking and cycling has got such potential to deliver real benefits to the livability of our cities, to congestion in our cities, and to people's health and well-being. The Greens took a package to the last election of saying that the federal government needs to come up to the plate and deliver $1 billion of funding in walking and cycling infrastructure. That would really kick-start what's needed to be really having high-quality infrastructure, safe infrastructure, infrastructure that makes it easy for people to walk and cycle. And yet the government has washed its hands of that completely. So, in conclusion, All we have got in this ministerial statement is more of the same. We have got the Abbott government's roads, roads, roads agenda just being continued to deliver under this guise, this veneer that things are different. But things aren't different. Things need to be different. Things have to change if we're going to have livable cities, if we're going to tackle congestion in our cities and really deliver on transport and infrastructure for our country that is going to boost jobs, boost productivity and boost our overall health and well-being.